Okay, adding fractions is one of the hardest operations to do, or one of the hardest things to do with fractions. Multiplying is easier. Division you can turn into a multiplication using keep, change, flip, and there's a video to explain that. But adding fractions and subtracting, because it's very similar, is the hardest. And the biggest mistake we see students do is the following: a half plus a half. Now when you multiply, you just work with the top and work with the bottom. So let's do that on this one. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Cancel that down, you get a half. Oh, now you can see that isn't right. You can see that if you've got half and another half, it doesn't equal a half, it equals a whole one. So this is the biggest mistake we see. We see people doing what they do for multiplication and just applying it to addition without thinking. You can't have a whole one, half of one plus a half one and get another half. It's not possible. So that just tells us, or should tell us, that it's not right. So if you ever want to check, just try it and see, does it work? It doesn't work. So what do we do instead? Well, let's think about what it's saying. We have 1/2 and we add another half. So how many halves do we have in total? The halves haven't changed. We still have halves. So the bottom number stays the same. It's still halves. It's not changing. It's just we've got one of them and now we're adding another one to them. Well, 1 plus 1 is 2. So we have 2 halves. Well, 2 divided by 2 is simply 1, as we would expect. A half plus a half equals 2 over 2, which equals 1. We keep the bottom number, or the denominator, the same, and then we just add the top number. We add the numerator, or numerators, to get 2. And that's the same for all fractions which have the same bottom number. 1/3 plus 1/3. Well, if I have 1/3 and add another third to it, I'm asking how many thirds do I have? Well, 1 plus 1 is 2. I've got 2/3. Or 1/5 plus 2/5 is still about how many fifths I have. So the same bottom numbers, same denominator. And now add the top numbers, the numerators. 1 plus 2 is 3, 3/5. So when you're adding simple fractions where the bottom numbers are the same, make sure that you just think about it in terms of, well, how many of that type of fraction do I have? So that's the easy ones, and everyone should be able to get those with a bit of practice. Now, they do get harder. Because what about a half plus a third? A half plus a third. Now, it's no longer right to say, well, how many halves do we have? Or how many thirds do we have? I want to know what a half plus a third is. So what I've got to think about is if I can change that half into a type of fraction, which I can also change the third into. Okay. So I've got to think, can I change my denominator, or my bottom number, into another number by multiplying it? Well, the answer is yes, I can. 6. I can turn that into 6. I can turn it into lots of numbers. I can turn it into 10. I can turn it into 8. I can turn it into lots of numbers. But the good thing about this 6 is I can also turn this 3 into 6 by multiplying. 3 2s are 6. So now, if I can keep the size of the fraction the same here and here, I can now talk about the addition, because no longer am I trying to combine halves and thirds, but I'm combining sixths. So it's now about how many sixths do I have? And then we can see if it cancels back afterwards. Okay, so let's look at it. I've changed this 2 to a 6 by multiplying by 3. So to keep this fraction the same, I've got to multiply the top number by 3. 3 times by 1 is 3. Let's just check. Is 3 out of 6 a half? 3/6 a half. It is, so I've got that right. What about this one? I've multiplied 3 by 2 to get 6. So let's multiply 1 by 2. There you go. And you get 2 on top. Now, 3 plus 2 is then 5. So I have 5/6. So although I haven't got the answer as halves or thirds, I have now got an answer which combines the two into a simple question. So I've turned it into one of the easier ones by changing the 2 into a 6 and the 3 into a 6. Let's look at another example, maybe one that is a bit easier to spot. What about a half plus a quarter? Right, now, it's not asking how many halves I have or how many quarters I've got. I'm just saying, what is a half and a quarter in total? Well, hopefully, quite quickly, you can see I could write that half as 2 quarters. And keep that as quarters. Now I've changed the question to how many quarters do I have? So, keeping the bottom number the same, the denominator the same. Add the numerators, I get 3 quarters. So for all of these questions, we are aiming to change the bottom numbers so they are the same, but keep the size of the original fraction the same. Half a pizza is the same as 2 quarters. Pizza, there's a half and 2 quarters. It's the same amount. So we haven't changed the question, we've just rewritten it in a form that we can have the same type of fraction, the same denominator. And then all the questions are just variations of that. Now, let's just check one more example, a little bit harder. Let's do 3/5 plus 5/6. I'm just trying to think of something. There you go, 3/5 plus 5/6. So let's start by thinking about a number that we can convert both 5 into and 6 into. So let's write the question out underneath. We can't just add the numbers together, that's not right. Okay, so what can I turn 5 and 6 into? What's in both the 5 times table and the 6 times table? Now, if you can't think of any other number, what you can do is you can always multiply these two numbers together to give you an answer. But, okay, or you can list them out. Here's my 5 times table, 5, 10, 15, and so on. And here's my 6 times table. I'm writing out my multiples here. Okay, and look, which is the lowest multiple in both the lists? 30. So this is, you have to do lowest common multiples, so this is a use of lowest common multiples. Okay, so now 30, so we're going to use 30. So rather than adding fifths and sixths together, we're going to add 30ths. Okay, now we've got to keep the size of this fraction the same. So to get from 5 to 30, I've multiplied by 6. So I've got to multiply the top by 6. Well, 3 6s are 18. Let's check here. 1, 2, 3. 3 6s are 18. And what about getting from 6 to 30? I've times by 5. Let's add these together. 5 times by 5 is 25. Okay. So now all I've got to do is add 25 to 18. Now don't rush it. If you need to, write it to the side. It's better you get it right than guess it and get it wrong. Now 5 and 8 is 13, and 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So it's 43 over 30. If that helps, I hope that helps. If not, come and see us and watch our other videos on how to convert numbers like this into mixed numbers.